there's around about 200 children a day that lose contact with their fathers through the family courts. Fatherless families, that's where the highest crime rates. The children grow up to be violent, with criminals.
It's just full-on narcissistic attention-seeking control, and that's all it is. I don't know how you do it. I'll be in prison.
If your husband doesn't like you wearing leggings because it's exposing your figure and body, how dare you tell me this? I'm here, you wear whatever you want. So as a Muslim, we're not even allowed to request our wives to do that.
It's got out of order now. Most of the statistics show that single-parent fathers bring up children better than single-parent mothers, if you want to go and look at the figures as well. Welcome to another episode on Cage Closed, another podcast today. A subject which needs to be aired, which needs to be put out there, which is somehow been shoved under the carpet in some communities. But we're here today to help enlighten people what's actually going on in families. And today's subject, what we're going to be talking about, is the breakdown of the Muslim family and parental alienation. Around the table, I've got four lovely gentlemen, Ali, Farook, Khalid and Ramiz. I'm just going to throw it at them now, go around this side, around the table, and just give us a little introduction about yourselves.
Alhamdulillah, so my name is Ramiz Ibrahim. Some of you may have known me. I've been in the community for over 25 years, Islamic community. That's when I came into Deen. And basically my main job, apart from my clinic, as everyone knows, I do counselling, psychotherapy, mentoring, coaching for families in and around East London mainly. It's mainly Muslims, to be honest with you.
Right, okay. And you, Khalid?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Khalid Rashid, and I went through the family court system myself, now to fight for custody for my children. That was around about 9 years ago, and since then, each year's now been helping parents get back with their children. I run an organisation called Family Court Support Service, and through that I work through the family court system, trying to get access mainly with fathers to their children, but also for mediation and support services.
Okay, thank you. Farouk?
Yeah, my name's Farouk. I started Disqualified Dads, a small platform just to try and expose the family court, separation, divorce, all the associated issues and topics around everything we're going to talk about. So yeah, and I'm in the family court system myself as well. So my eyes have opened. My eyes have opened. I can see it for what it is now, and I'm a different man. So here I am.
Alhamdulillah. Ali?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Ali. I'm a Mackenzie friend of very similar to Khalid, 89 years of experience on the family court, working fathers mainly, going through the family courts, dealing with child custody issues, divorce, finance, so on. So, and predominantly working within the Muslim community. So, over the years, we've seen a dramatic change within the community, and unfortunately, this is probably one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, that's why we're around the table today. Okay, so before we get started, a big shout out to our sponsor, AWCI, all for all the dry lining, all your plasterboarding, all throughout Berkshire. Give them a call. They're going to be on our descriptions below. Yeah, thank you everyone for that one there. And yeah, nice guys. You can their work is very good as well. And then let's plunge into this dark pool. And before we jump in head first, I'd like to put out a disclaimer there that this is first of all, this isn't any legal advice we're giving here today. It's just a few guys around the table talking about our experiences and our personal experiences as well as other experiences we've seen in our work. Also, another part of the disclaimer, this is not directed at every person, every family, every beautiful relationship going out there. This is a minority of people, men and women out there, who use parental alienation as a form of abuse and neglect on their children, and which affects everybody. Okay, so let's start off after that. And epidemic, just come out of an epidemic, but this one's been going for a long time before that. Yeah, the breakdown of Muslim families, the breakdown of families in general in Western society. But, you know, if we focus on the Muslim family, Ramiz, what can you say what's been happening over the last few years, what you've seen in your job?
This is relatively new to me as a as a therapist, but now it's becoming more evident and more profound hearing it for myself as a therapist. I haven't dealt with many families that are going through this. I'm mainly dealing with families that are dealing with just normal abuse. There's no such thing as normal abuse, but, you know, they're already married, they're going through domestic violence, they're, you know, maybe the children getting abused, whatever it may be. So I'm trying to do around the so-called normal family dynamics. But every day I'm hearing it more and more and more. And as I mentioned earlier before the podcast, I think in the next 5-10 years, there will be more victims, I would say, who will be coming or seeking therapy around PA.
But not just PA, what about...
I say that
the divorce rate
well, it's increased. I mean, 20 years ago, as you know, we see a lot of things happening amongst the non-Muslims, and you end up saying to yourself, well, give it 10 to 20 years, it's going to affect us as well. You know, you can't live in a toxic environment and not get affected by that environment. It's going to affect you as well, by whatever degree it may be. So when I hear, you know, PA, and then I hear it's a pseudoscience, it bounces my brain from being subjective to objective, and I can't go to objectivity here because it's a real thing that happens to a human feeling, especially when it happens to the children. Because as you know, the system now and life has now become more evident that is geared towards breaking down families. And then after the families are broken down, there's more input of breaking it more down, like the breaking it, the psychology of the child, the emotion of the child. If you bring it back again, and if you bring it back, say 10, 15 years, I've always been pushing families to bring up their children in such a way they give them the skills to deal with if your parent ever says this, or your mum ever says, or your dad ever says this. Not to like, I'm on the system side, but just to keep the family unit together. Because without the skill set and the education, this is going to get worse.
Have you seen...
Which it has done. It's more evident now.
Have you seen some kind of... What have you seen generally happening with the breakdown of Muslim families? Is there something what's coming up so many times when you're tackling these cases?
I think you described it with correctly, epidemic. When I started, when I was in my own situation, I didn't even know what a family court was. I didn't know it existed. After I went through the system and I started helping people, the more people I helped, the more and more I realized Muslim fathers were coming, asking for advice and guidance. My wife's down there, she's taking the kids, I can't see them, I don't know what to do. So right now, predominantly, I probably do around about 98, 99% just Muslims I help assist, because it's it's like an epidemic within our community now. It was unheard of before. Yeah, because divorce is a taboo subject, you know, especially in the Muslim communities, in the South Asian communities especially. But it's happening at an alarming rate. And it's not just the men that are, because men are mainly the victims of divorce because of financial reason. They use the children, you know, X, Y, and Z. However, women also now, I'm finding, starting to realize what's going on. Divorce is happening at an alarming rate. Social media is a big part of it, I think. This influenced lifestyle, you know, a lot of the younger generations are following this, and that's giving them a false sense of reality, I think. You know, we've got to look back at what marriage is and the fundamentals of marriage. And unfortunately now, it's all about me, I want this, I want that. So there's false standards there, and that's one of the causes of the family breakdown. Unfortunately, what people don't realize is we're adults. No, we can amicably part, but it's the children that suffer. So, and that's what's destroying our ummah, if you would like to say it, because, you know, we're not protecting our children, and the children are suffering from marriage breakdowns because there's acrimonious proceedings. Unfortunately, the system that we have here, it breeds acrimony. The system is geared for acrimony. It's a massive industry. There's some stats flying around. The whole divorce industry is worth about 48 billion. That's a massive industry. And, you know, obviously that industry needs to survive. And
the family court generates, they say, more money than the defence
budget.
budget.
Yeah.
So that's
I've heard that as well. Yeah.
That's a big figure. We are going to touch on how it destroys the family and generations afterwards. But
So just to add to that, the defence budget in itself is 70.2 billion, if I'm correct, with the research I've done. So, as he said, the family court around 40 billion, if not potentially more, close to the defence budget. So, and it is, again, even when I talk about this and I think about it and how it is done, you sit there and wonder how much money is being made from destroying children's lives. And to touch on the other subjects that Khalid's pointed out about the Ummah. Now, I've worked with a lot of English people from a young age in an apprenticeship. And when you're that age and when you're young, went to a mixed school, the white working class people that I knew at the time, parents had divorced, split up. So that's been going on for a long time, yeah? That system's been in process. So when the white working class people that I've worked with, you know, they've always got this chip on the shoulder that have been left behind. The family court system has destroyed their communities 20, 30 years ago, I believe. Yeah, they've already done,
I agree with that.
And what they said is the Asian communities, as an immigrant community, very successful. They said, why were immigrant communities successful? They had that family unit and structure, the South Indian Asian communities, yeah? So now this is why I think on the bigger plan as to what is to be achieved. If you now destruct, firstly, now I think it is the time of the Muslim and the South Indian communities. They're now being destroyed by this system and the family court system from what I've seen and what Khalid and everyone else has said now, yeah? Two-part to that, I believe, is to firstly keep the working class working. If you destroy a man and he has to start again at 40, 50, he's not going to live his best life. He's just there, just getting by and surviving. He'll remain in that pocket, I believe. If kids are damaged, emotionally damaged, they're more susceptible to different ideas, ideologies from an Islamic perspective, I'll put it that way, yeah. And also, you may not live the best version of yourself. You may not achieve what you would have maybe achieved. So you remain potentially in that working class bracket. I don't know. There must be something behind it, I believe, to keep it there. And in the meantime, like I said, there's barristers, solicitors, the legal aid system, the whole system, every step of the way, you part with thousands. We're talking like the best scam I have ever seen is the family court system. I mean, I was born and raised in Preston, fraud capital of the country, yeah. This is the best scam I have seen. Is the family court system, the legal aid lawyers, the whole lot, yeah. And that is what it is, I believe. It's something around that.
I think the same way where they make weapons and they've got to create a war to sell those weapons.
100%.
The same way we spoke about it's a money-making scam, like everything else is. It's all about money. You're talking about 40 billion and you said about 70 billion defence budget. I mean, that's not far off.
Yeah,
so they've got to create
yeah,
a scenario where they can go to the courts to make that money.
Yeah, but I just want to add one more thing before he jumps in, yeah? You don't need to create anything. If I take your child away from you, that is the basic core human instincts that you will fight and die for your child. You're willing to split with a few grand. You're willing to get a loan out. You're willing to rob someone to do that. Yeah. That's my point. That is the basic core primal human instinct. Even now when we talk about it, you sit and wonder, what sort of society and a system do we live in where I cannot walk up the road to see my child, my own flesh and blood, up the road, mile up the road? How is that even possible to contemplate that for a second?
You can't contemplate.
This is what I'm trying to say. We could go over this. These boys do it day in, day out. I don't know how they do it day in, day out, but to even fathom that idea and accept it is not for me. And this is what exposure that I want to try and contribute to bringing out ultimately.
Ali?
Yeah, just a point regarding in terms of the breakdown of the Muslim family or the Muslim community as such. Part and part, speaking from personal experience and part and part showing age, I grew up in the 90s. Pretty much still then, it was divorce in our community was a taboo. We grew up knowing that one of the last things, if it could be made haram, it would have been divorce. You know, a very strong group is divorce.
Right.
that's the indoctrination that we had, and the value of marriage. And what I've seen over time, where people have moved away from the deen, and I'm talking ideologically. I'm not talking necessarily praying and doing your rituals. I'm talking the ideology of the deen in terms of the value of marriage. What marriage actually means to communities and build these civilizations. What does it mean to have children and grow these children into good human beings, planned of God, to make good choices, and so on. So we've seen that breakdown, and where I've pinned it down to is our Lord ideological, where we've moved away from the deen ideologically and accepted things like materialism, things like individualism, things like feminism. Feminism is both men and women. And that's where basically when you get speaking within the Muslim community, you see that materialism, that feminism, that individualism come out. And, for example, and it starts right from a childhood. And I'm sure Brother Ramiz can probably clarify this as well. It's how are we bringing up our children? Are we bringing them up to be individualists? Or are we bringing them up to be sharing, caring people within their families, within their neighborhood, within their community? Now you see kids, you go to take a chip off one kid's plate and it'll kick off. But we've come from a culture where we sit and eat from the floor, where we eat for one plate.
We share.
We do things as a family, we pray together. So it's the small things like this, which is what I class as social science, that I've seen completely missing now from the Muslim community, Muslims in general, and there has to be a return back to the ideology of the deen, essentially. Until we don't get that, we're going to just keep on going around in cycles.
The deen is a family unit.
Articulated.
The deen is a family unit. That's what, and have to go back to the deen now. It becomes a cliche now, because everyone's so far away from the input of the deen. When you talk about the deen now, it's, okay, here we go. But this is exactly what we have to do.
But
the new generation that's happening now, the new generation, like you said, they've been alienated. They've been made me, myself, and I. It's like Cat D prison, for example. The Cat D prison is you go to prison, but you still go out for the study for the day, or you can still work for the day and come back to the prison. What's the difference between that and your house?
But do you know what the scary thing is? The sign of end time. I'm not a very learned man, so don't quote me on anything, yeah? Sign of end time. Dean's everywhere. It's on TV, it's on your phone, social media. There's guys, every platform going. It's everywhere around. But my point is, in your personal affairs, is it, like he said, very well put, is it in your personal affairs? With materialism and all the other stuff Ali pointed out comes egos. We're not wrong. Our child's okay. It's them. Let's screw them over. Forget the kids are irrelevant. It all plays into that.
Yeah, nothing's really like looking to nourish the actual family. It's just like words, isn't it?
It's like, look,
Sorry to butt you in, but
sorry, go on.
I'm going through it, and I've been through it now. This is like second round, but you seem to think like you're on your own as well, because there isn't all this social media out there. It's only like now it's coming, prominent, what's going on with alienation. But till I went to a dinner a few weeks ago, where a group of fathers were all getting together to, meet up to show some unity. And I turned up at this restaurant, and from where the door opened to the back of the restaurant, there was this long table, and on this table was all these fathers. And at that time before that, I just thought, it's not really that much going on. There's not many people involved in this. Do you know what? We could have had a street party going on, and about the fathers who are actually going through this at the moment. This thing, this parent alienation, and that's what I want to.
Well, you were saying 140,000 a year, right? Who was saying that earlier on? How many cases you were
There's
thinking?
140,000 CAFCAS cases a year. Out of that 140,000 cases, there's 80% of that they put down to like parental alienations involved.
Statistics that exist. There are statistics around that say there's around about 200 children a day that lose contact with their fathers through the family courts. And That's a shocking statistic.
200.
200 a day that have not got access to their fathers. That's there. You know, if anyone wants to look at how the breakdown of the family is happening, it's right there. 200 children are losing access to their fathers. That means the father's then been removed from that family unit. And all the statistics show, you could look into it, that fatherless families, that's where the highest crime rates. The children grow up to be violent, with criminals.
The anarchy culture, isn't it? It's anarchy agenda.
They commit suicide. They have mental health issues and problems. So it's a big issue. But we were discussing just earlier about the deen itself. Unfortunately, like, we see this day in, day out. Muslims have to rely on the man-made courts, you know, the courts of the land, because our own system is insufficient. You know, when a Muslim family, if Muslim couple want to end their marriage, who do they turn to? You know, there is not a specific system in place. Yes, we've got Sharia law, but the system in the UK especially, you know, it's non-existent. You know, there is nothing there. We should have a system in our own communities that handles a family breakdown, sorts out child arrangements, mediation, you know, even reconciliation. But there isn't. You know,
Do you think the imams in the mosque could be doing more as well?
Absolutely.
Are they actually bringing these forward?
I've got to say, as I see it, I think the religious aspect to the whole family court, and if we talk about family breakdown, yeah, let's say a guy, as we were discussing earlier, he's got a problem with his missus in the sense that she may have a personality disorder, second generational trauma. Asian communities grew up differently 20 years ago, families were run differently, and hence that's brought its own set of problems. Yeah, when a guy from, say, our generation, this generation, or back when some of these guys went through their trauma, went to the imam, if your imam was of a certain age, certain background, you had no understanding of what do you call it, personality, they're not qualified to advise you. They don't understand. And when you talk about, in some cases, if you guys have got problems, that in the sense that you don't get along, you are different people. As mentioned, even I was raised that divorce was taboo. Once you were in, you were locked in. I had that mindset, and that's how we grew up in the 90s. So then there was an element of you were stuck in your own little prison. So you can't go to the imam, you can't really go to your mum and dad. They don't understand it. This is taboo for them. They grew up differently. It was a different time.
The imams.
Hence the imams, my own experience, completely socially disconnected.
Absolutely. The imams nowadays, and even now in 2023, and we've been in 25 years, that we've been struggling to even get to even do work with the local masjid and work with the imams. You know what the imams are? Just £200 a week, £300 a week to recite the Quran, pray 5 times, to lead the salah, and there's no work.
Look, to be fair to them, I also believe it's wrong to put it onto just the imams, the scholars.
They've just come back from back home, but it's the committee members in there. They're not doing for the community. I think there's 5 times they're restricted. Absolutely,
there's no leadership. There's some good work being done by certain Islamic organisations, but there's not enough of them.
But even then, I get complaints weekly and sometimes daily. I went to this Sharia council, they told me to go home. This Sharia council, they're not doing anything.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about Sharia council. When
it comes to mediation, regarding just general mediation of, they can handle that. When it comes to something like serious as this, they're afraid to get their hands dirty.
I get a lot of complaints from the clients that I see, is we tried to go down mediation through the masjid. When it came to child arrangement, they said, "Oh no, let the UK courts deal with that. We don't."
Right.
And that's a big issue. Why? And you look at, so when you're doing your counselling session, they'll probably just want to talk about their own, husband and wife issues, for example. When it comes to child arrangements, they won't want to talk to you
because they know what's going to happen. Yeah, they know what's going to happen. Yeah.
I think that's the answer. Islam is beautiful because it gives you. It gives you a way out. You don't have to have massive reasons.
So instead of mediating, they want out.
And unfortunately, they then lean to the court system.
It's easy for them to do.
Which is the whole process. And the easy things to do is allege, domestic violence, domestic abuse. Unfortunately, right now, anything can be classed as domestic violence and abuse, especially coercive controlling behaviour. I find, and I'm sure Brother Ali would find as well, because he does the same line of work, the fathers that are going through the family court system, it's the Muslim fathers that get it the worst, unfortunately. I've helped non-Muslims, all nationalities, everything. But it's the Muslim fathers that get it the worst, because we have then the religious and then the cultural abuse allegations as well to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's what the women then rely on. So when we're in court, we'll get the religious, backwards Muslim man views and the sodomies so we get all of these kind of allegations. But it's not just, infidelity, it's financial reasons as well. Finance is a huge, huge part of it. Because the UK court system, the man-made court system, makes it so easy for a woman to end the marriage, either stay in the house, get 50-50 or whatever, he is financially. So, like I was saying earlier, the whole system breeds acrimony, and the women know that we can lean back and will be supported and guided through this system, whereas as men, we don't have no support.
And the family makes it easy. Her family makes it easy as well, instead of trying to keep the family unit together.
Yeah.
So just to add what Khalid was saying there, I really think what I was saying in terms of materialism, individualism, and feminism, now you're going to see how this comes into play. So let's just say non-Muslims, Muslims, everybody as a whole, one of the three main reasons of divorce in the Western world is incompatibility, financial reasons, and infidelity, cheating, zina. Now, you see basically we are called out individualism, materialism, and feminism. Now you see these three reasons, you can see how they're all aligned. Yeah. So for example, if we take the first one, incompatibility, that very much comes down to individualism. Yeah. In terms of
Self-privilege, and understand I'm better than you, and victim, I can do better.
Yeah.
Educations and so on, and that's both sides, men and women. Of course, the statistics say that women in the West initiate the divorce or break relationships or leave relationships as opposed to men.
But 80%
is a one-woman man, and he will stay. He will fend his house. He will fend his cave. He will bring up his flock. That's a man in his nature, in his primal nature. Whereas, again, this is really, I know it's subjective in terms of the argument of women working from emotions and impulse. Yeah, and I think in terms of individualism, materialism, that really feeds that. Yeah, because there's nothing intellectual or anything mentally substance behind any of these isms. Yeah, and it ties back into, and unfortunately, as I was saying earlier on, Muslims have diverted or moved away from the intellectual understanding of the deen and have completely accepted and
all else. Yeah.
Accepted materialism, individualism, and feminism. And then that's where you see all toxic Westernism, if you want to put it another term for that category. Yeah, and then you see that is reflected in terms of the reasons of divorce. And then unfortunately, what happens after that, after the divorce, is where there's children involved, is unfortunately children are weaponized. And one of the main ways that they're weaponized is through things like parental alienation.
Parental alienation. Yeah.
Parental alienation, the term itself is a relatively new term. Yeah, but parental alienation has been around for days.
Centuries. And just going on from that point now, as we move into us discussing about parental alienation, has anyone around the table got a simple terminology of it?
In a nutshell, parental alienation is where a parent, without justification, will psychologically manipulate a child against the other parent. That, in a nutshell, what PA is. And it causes a great deal of harm for a lifetime for that child. And that's the problem. The parent, and it's not just women. You do have fathers as well that have the custody, are then alienating the children again from other, but that's a lot rarer. Majority of children are with their mothers, and it causes a lifetime effect. And we see it throughout society. Disenfranchised children, emotionally harmed, mental health issues. My own children, like I said, I went through this like 9 years ago, and I still see the effects in my children, whether it be academically or socially, and they're lucky they have, loving family and parent there. However, some children don't. It's just by the parent household, grow up without a father figure.
Well, what brings about that child? What's actually happening in parental alienation to bring that child who's once upon a time is so loving to the parent, the mother or the father, and the next minute there's a switch.
Simple narcissism.
Where's a switch?
I can't see any.
Yeah, but I'm just saying this for the audience because I want everyone to relate to it. Our listeners out there, the people are viewing.
It's not overnight. It's done like it's over time, innit? The emotional dependency.
Children are sponges. Yeah. Children see their parents in terms of, sorry to use this term, as godlike figure. They're very attached to their parents. They listen to their parents. I know some parents will turn around and say, "What you so listen to me," but bottom line is the child is very much attached to the parent. Yeah, and naturally, when there's a breakup of the family unit, children detect this, and we find Brother Ramiz might be able to touch upon this, and it can come across with him in his line of work, is in terms of emotional issues or psychological issues of children just without alienation, without any bad thinking of the parents or anything like that, but just in a breakdown, children are going to be affected. Yeah.
So you're right to touch upon. Sorry, but you say something.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just to touch on that, there's stats there that 1 in 10 children contemplate suicide after their parents separate. That's the effect just separation alone has on children. Imagine then if that child has been parentally alienated from the other parent for no good reason. And Ali touched on it earlier as well. Children are used as weapons. That's what he said. And we see it day in, day out, where one parent will use, and it's mainly, again, I'm sorry for the sisters, but it's mainly the sisters who do this. They use the children as a weapon to hurt the father for no good reason, other than for revenge or get one over on the father.
I think that comes back down to that point of individualism.
But I just want to add to that, sorry, but before I'm going to lose my thread otherwise, yeah, sorry.
I'll lose mine instead.
Yeah, you lose one, I'll lose the next one, yeah? See, with that alienation, again, you're talking about on separation to control one child or against the ex, alienation can be done, as discussed before, from day dot to control the partner in a relationship. The tactics are used. Now, the cases I've dealt with and people I've dealt with, yeah, you go and talk to, this guy's children, for example, yeah. His children will talk about their mum and all of their mum's side of the family. On the mum's side of the family, uncles, aunts, they will very rarely ever mention anyone from that side of the family, because the time and the environment they spend around those families and those relations, that bond is very much controlled. And it's easier for the mother to control that because the old man goes to work ultimately. And when he's not around, your dad's never around because he's always working, but don't worry, mum's. So that alienation is done from day dot to get the partner to fall in line and conform to, like Ali said, that individual narrative of what I want out of this. Hence, I can't manage you on my own, but I can use the kids to control you. Sorry, yeah, go for it.
This is pure manipulation. It's narcissistic behaviour, not just with the children, but pre-divorce.
Yeah.
She knows what she's doing. She's planned it all. And in order to plan it all, you've got to get the kids on your side. You've got everyone around your side. So you play the victim.
Calculated.
So it's very calculated. So you're talking about a sponge. You can only squeeze out of a child what you allow the sponge to soak up in the first place. So this is already happening without the father knowing. He's out there 14, 16 hours a day, coming home, even helping out in the family structure as well, which is not a problem, helping out the wife, whatever it is. And all the while, she's in her mind planning X, Y, and Z.
Coercive control. That's
right,
exactly it.
Exactly. But it doesn't work on her because everyone accepts that a woman is the victim because of the supposedly statistics. Supposedly.
Not just that, Brother Ramiz, but in the South Asian community, going back to the last question now that you've touched on it, even before I entered the family court arena, even though I knew my own experiences and other people's experiences of the whole domestic abuse, if you see, especially an Asian woman coming across crying and screaming, saying she's hurt and she's been beat up, even knowing what I know, there's an element of, oh man, what a basket her husband must be. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a moment where you automatically, as a man, you would design, you see a woman crying, say it's your sister, you see her
Straight
crying,
away,
there's an element of you want to look out for her. That's what you do primarily.
We spoke about
and you fall into that narrative. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't.
From a professional,
No. Could be subjective.
that what you just said about crying. Now, in the family court system, if you look at social work, predominantly it's women. Yeah.
Right.
Social workers. If you look at social workers, they are predominantly female. If you look at CAFCAS, they are predominantly female. Majority of the judges that you see are most likely female as well. That from my experience, I can't confirm that officially.
But this isn't a coincidence.
If you look at magistrates judges, who are lower end judges from district judges, they are predominantly female that I've come across. I've seen this time and time and time again in court, or out of court, whether it's in front of social workers, CAPCAS officers, or in front of these judges. As soon as a woman starts crying, it changes.
Right. Okay. Dynamics of
The narrative.
You mean they believe her from the tears?
Yeah, of course. And if you allow me, this might be a little bit. It's a systematic approach and a plan that these women follow. And I'm sorry,
Advised by the lawyers who are, or by the.
what we're discussing is alienation starts way back. It definitely does. The process is a long process. Once someone realizes, right, I want help, especially in our community, you mentioned the South Asian community, there has to be a blame game.
Yeah.
No one can just separate.
So when we say South Asian, what's the difference between Asian and
India, Pakistan, Bangladesh.
Indo-Pak.
Especially in the subcontinent.
Yeah.
There has to be someone to blame. So if the wife is leaving, if she doesn't want to marry, she has to blame the husband, vice versa. And that's a big thing in our communities. But the system itself, there's a process that these women follow. That process starts off maybe months and months and months before she initiates the move, the divorce, or whatever.
She has to plan it. She has to plan the.
Absolutely. That starts off from my, the sisters might get offended by having mothers' meetings outside at school, having their best friends.
The mum's club, yeah.
So, like I said, anything nowadays can be classed as domestic abuse and violence and coercive control. So if your husband doesn't like you wearing leggings because it's exposing your figure and body, how dare you tell me this? I'm going to hear you wear whatever you want. So as a Muslim, we're not even allowed to request our wives to do that. So it starts off with little things. So what happens then is they get encouraged to report these, to log these things. So they start the record building exercise from way into, before they want to leave. So it starts off generally by going to the GP. I'm down and I'm depressed, my relationship, I'm getting abused. The GP will then make a referral to Women's Aid. That's where the destruction of the family unit begins.
Right.
Is when Women's Aid get involved. And I'm calling out Women's Aid specifically here because they are the biggest organization that are spreading the fitna within our own community, because our sisters are relying on Women's Aid. When Women's Aid get involved, they assigned a support worker. That support worker will then assist the sisters to basically draw out a roadmap for them to leave the relationship.
So they're not there for mediation and trying to make it work. They're there just to put them away.
Yeah, then because of no concept of reconciliation. Yeah, a woman has to be believed. That's one of the ethos.
That's a feminist.
That's pure feminism, then, isn't it? That's pure feminism.
A woman is never wrong.
Yeah, it's pure feminism then. And we can't get offended. They can't get offended by that.
You have to believe her. So you have to treat her as the victim. So all she then needs is
Without proof.
without proof and evidence. So all the process then, what happens is the woman wants to leave. And how does she do that then? She has to then become an abuse victim. So she's got the record logged with her.
The template's there, basically.
Yeah. It's that the handbook, straight.
We'll then issue her a victim support letter saying that she, in my professional opinion, this woman is at high risk of domestic abuse and violence. That letter and that GP record is then passed on to get legal aid, which without doubt they'll get legal aid with that because they are then classed as victims of domestic abuse and violence. And that's when that's in place, that's generally when the woman then flees. And if she does flee with the children, it's generally through the women's refuge. They'll go through the refuge system, that's where they get fast track to social housing. Within months even, they can get, a permanent place, sometimes longer, sometimes even quicker, depends on where they are in the country. So it's a whole process that they follow, whereas the man is left not knowing what has just hit me.
Well, the question I wanted to ask
You don't know what
is,
day of the week it is, yeah, fortunately.
say it happened to the man.
Men, unfortunately, there is no one there for the men. There's no women's aid or men's aid.
Well, can't lawyers and barristers, there must be hundreds of lawyers and barristers and social workers that are Muslim that can get together, hire a building and that's it, just for brothers, instead of doing individually.
No, but first and foremost, in the South Asian community, right, until, like you said, this brother said, until you come into this arena and see what's going on, before that, to go into even your own friend circle or your brother's circle, say, listen, I'm slightly being managed or controlled, or when you see your stories are that brother. Now this South Asian community, there's a label for everything. So you ain't seen your brother for years, or he just after he got married, had kids, got distant. He's up his wife's rear end, hence he doesn't come round. There's a label for everything. Not maybe there's an issue, and he himself, the guy in it, he doesn't know how to manage it because he's got his kids there. He's paranoid about managing the situation.
Yeah.
There's a personality disorder element and all these other stuff which is being perpetrated by her family as well. Who are you going to tell? And how do
You got to sign up.
But who you exactly?
That's what they'll say to be honest.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So if you go tell your mates, they'll be like, you can't handle your wife and all that cultural rhetoric. You can't go to no one, and you don't want to tell your mum or sisters because you don't want to add more women to the problem. Is just making it
That's why men carry a lot of things.
Talking about.
So you carry it. You just sign the right and carry it. Yeah,
Carry it illegally. Once the brothers realise that this ain't going to work, there must be some kind of governing body around the local community to help that brother come out of it, just like women.
There's no one.
There isn't.
Unfortunately, there's no one.
It's a phrase I use quite a lot whenever I'm speaking to people, and it's a phrase that was said to me as well. So imagine you'll come home one day and your wife and kids are not there anymore. Where are they? You don't know where they are. Yeah. So you naturally start looking for them, searching for them. When you still can't find them, who do you then turn to? The police.
Yeah.
You find the police, and this is the phrase that you get told. They're safe and well. We can't tell you anything else. Seek legal advice. So then that father then has no option other than going to get legal advice. What's going on? The police have just told.
He's panicked. Yeah.
Safe and well. And then they go to legal advice. So then the lamb goes to slaughter. When you then go into legal advice, that's when
they start fleecing you.
a vulnerable person. And unfortunately, for a father to go through the family court system, it will cost you on average minimum £15,000 to £20,000 from start to end. That's minimum. Whereas the woman will get legal aid, based on that supporting letter from a victim support officer.
He can never be a victim. He can never be a victim.
Of course he can, but again, you can't just go and say I'm a victim of domestic abuse and violence. Number one,
There's no template for the man.
who do they call? I went through this myself. I've tried to seek help. I have hundreds of fathers who do the same thing. We're put from pillar to pillar. We're sent from one place to another place to another, and then we do a full circle and come back, but we haven't actually achieved anything. So there's someone listening to our sob story.
That's one scenario as well, Khalid. What about the scenario when you just come home from work and there's a policeman standing there saying you're not coming, you can't come in, and here you go, look at your WhatsApp, there's a non-molestation order. Yeah. So what happens in that scenario?
That's a very common one as well. It happened to myself.
And myself.
There's code words, there's, keywords that these women, once these individuals get involved in assisting, they get then coached and trained in what to say and how to say it and when to say it.
Right.
And the easiest thing for them to say is, call the police, he's made a threat to kill.
Yeah.
Police will then come and arrest you and move you out of the house. That will then enable the woman to then flee the house with the children, take whatever belongings, and that's it then. She's then left. You'll then spend the night locked up in a cell and most likely be released without further action after that. Non-molestation order is what you've just touched on. It's a tool within the family court system that the women use. Again, unfortunately, that's there as a dark cloud over your head. It can be obtained merely, just like with legal aid, just by writing the statement and making the application. You don't need evidence. Because if you look at it from the court perspective, they can't take a risk with a woman's safety or anyone's safety. if someone is saying that I'm in risk of danger, just to be on the safe side, the courts will issue that non-molestation order. Once they issue it, getting that non-molestation off you is
That prevents you from going to the house, seeing the kids or anything like that.
It's used to deny contact.
limitations that a father can or can't do, but the general ones are you can't go, for example, 100 meters within a certain area or property. You can't contact your ex.
Is this during the transition of divorce or the system, or this is afterwards as well, or continuously?
No, this generally happens after the woman leaves. So then the non-mol is put on the father. He automatically then has an injunction order on him. So it's all about putting the father as deep down as possible so he can't.
I'm surprised many brothers aren't in prison.
Just to add to that, I mean, I know we're saying like,
SubhanAllah,
if you don't know about this, when someone says you come home, you don't see your wife and kids, it sounds simple and you think, yeah, I'll call the police. The psychological element
the emotion,
to that,
I can imagine.
that's what people don't understand, the panic and the anxiety. That's when you start thinking, okay, I'll go to a lawyer, it's only 15 grand, I'll see my kids. It's that panic in that moment, and then you're served with this non-mol. You read these allegations against you, and it's a bit like, say you're in American prison, everyone's going, yeah, what did you do? No, I'm actually innocent. Yeah, bro, we're all lying, but no, really, I am. We're living with that thinking, no one's going to believe me. No, but this is law and order, they all believe me, there's no proof. You live in this delusional reality, and you're thinking, surely someone will believe me, Then you try and convince yourself it's going to be all right. And at the same time, that psychological element, you're potentially homeless, walking the streets. You're thinking, when am I going to see my kids? Am I going to see my kids? Will anyone believe me? You go through these stages daily, and there's a lot of brothers, unfortunately, then if you're on the street, easiest thing, grab a drink. Someone offers you a little smoke. There's a very dark roads you might start gambling. It's such a slippery road that forget even the rest of the journey. You might not make it back from your non-mol. I mean, a lot of guys, they don't make it back from that alone, I think.
There's negative escapism instead of finding something.
Just to come in on stripping it back down to basics, something that you said a little while ago in terms of, and something you said about manning up. And this is where, again, I'm going to keep on getting it back to my key points on materialism, individualism, and feminism. And how feminism actually is not just designed for men as or women, it affects men as well. And it is this part of man up, if she hits you, just take it, don't say nothing. Then it has men within our community, within just our own friendships, because we've been programmed in that manner. We don't know how to open up, we don't know how to talk, we don't know how to articulate our feelings, because we're not taught this, we're taught the opposite.
Well, this is something that I want to touch upon.
Yeah, so that in itself is a difficulty for men. Obviously, and this is something I've seen over my years of experience dealing with men. And then in terms of what you mentioned, in terms of the whole legal industry or the legal side, and first of all, again, just touching on a point the brother was making about gender inequality within the system. Yeah. One point you missed is something I saw recently. There's a campaign to get more men into becoming family law solicitors and barristers, because it's predominantly for women in that sense. So there's an inequality there. So therefore, there is hardly anything out there for men. Unfortunately, it was only 2 months ago that there was somebody I knew of, and he passed away due to overdose, suicide. And fundamentally, it comes down to because there was no or lack of support for men. Yeah, mental health and all the rest of it. I even know of women who know of this case, and they've said that if that was a woman in that position, she would not commit suicide. She would have got the help she needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so,
well, she has the help before, during, and after. She has the help, I'm saying, before, during, and after.
One refuge centre in London, in London, only one, and that's constantly full up. Yeah,
sorry, is that for men, you're saying? Right.
There's no safe space for men. So there's a lot of work to do to bring men to a stage where they can articulate their feelings, they can open up, they can look to see counsellors, mediators, psychologists like yourself, come speak to brothers like me and you, And that's where, I have seen men's charities, men's organizations over the years form and build. And they provide men the outlet. But when you look at them, they're underfunded, understaffed.
That's not a coincidence either.
And then I don't want to get into politics, but when you follow the money, you see millions, literally millions is pumped into women's aid organizations and that side. Whereas on the men, it's quite ironic because the whole sort of feminist argument was equality.
But instead of the equality, what they've done is it's a bit like, instead of leveling up, say, NHS staff money, instead of leveling up the pay, we'll bring you down to them. So instead of leveling up the women's equality, they've just brought men down to below the women to show that.
So now we've painted the landscape in terms of what the man goes through and how the man is viewed. And then as soon as the man turns around, the man has been accused of most times out of domestic abuse. Yeah. Then he turns around and says, my children have been alienated. Yeah. To the system, he sounds like a pure madman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because no, you're the abuser. No, they don't want to see you.
They don't want to hear that. They want you to justify what she's saying and defend.
The arguments they're using is, no, you're the abuser. The children don't want to see you because they witnessed you abusing mum, for instance. Yeah? Not just wearing this has a jail card. And that's where the whole thing of parental alienation being pseudoscience comes from. There's a large contingency of men and women that believe that parental alienation is not real, it's pseudoscience. There's a large contingency of men and women that have been falsely sold an idea that parental alienation is pseudoscience, and it's the abusers that use this as a get out of jail card to throw mud or taint some. And I suppose before I go into disqualifying or rebattling the whole pseudoscience element, I'll just put that out to yourselves.
So to add to that, what you just said, and this is the other problem. So you're a man in court, you're frustrated, you've jumped through all these hurdles, your skin, you just want to see your kids. Then you're frustrated. So when you start shouting parental alienation, and from all the stories I spoke to, there's like, yeah, we told you he was an abuser. Look, he's getting angry, he's mad. You play into that card straight away, and if you show frustration, see, we told you he was an abuser, or look how aggressive he is.
What's the percentage of men who win the case to actually see their children on a regular basis?
Statistics around. We try to obtain this.
What would be subjective then? See, what have you come across? Not many.
It's limited contact. Naturally, a father would want at the very least 50-50. Yeah, but the contact they'll get, because like you said, you have to jump through so many hoops and hurdles to get there. There's a thing called a fact finding that happens in family court proceedings. If one finding is made against the father, that then drastically cuts down the chance of him having significant contact.
Well, say if there is nothing dangerous and he's just the normal going to work, family, and
even there's so many different elements. We could talk about this all day of how to prevent the father having as much access as possible. One is when the women do flee, they make sure they flee further away, as far away as possible from, the man, the father, because when you're living in London and in Bradford, for example, you can't have 50-50.
Do you know what? From in conclusion, what I'm hearing, so far there's so much has happened and happened to brothers and non-brothers as well. To men, generally speaking. The only option is when that does happen, we need a support group for brothers. So you know what? Forget about it.
I think we need to go before that. We need an action plan for men. So before you end up in these situations, like you said, the women have a strategy and a plan.
This is where I come in. This is what I'm talking about there. But
they need an exit strategy and a plan.
Yeah, I was thinking earlier that what I'm going to say on this table, it becomes obsolete unless we're talking about now a plan to start training, mentoring, and supplying skill sets to brothers before they get married.
No, but before that, it comes out to exposure.
Without making it seem like if it doesn't work, just leave.
I just want to, sorry to cut in there. For example, in Malaysia, you have to do an actual course. You have to pass that test, and it's quite intense, before the imam gets you married off.
For men or women.
And that comes back down to my point on understanding the value and principles
of marriage.
But that's just
Can
like
we-
saying like saying that the people who it's happening to, they don't know about deen, which is probably they don't know about 30%. Pray 5 times a day, wear the with hijab, go to work, you stay at home. So what's the actual? Like you said, it could be fertility, it could be.
But we're in a society.
External.
We're in a society where we're multicultural, where we're living amongst non-Muslims and people looking at each other as well. So, you know, you're right. The values have been lost, and we've been speaking about the fathers, and now I'd just like to go in on how the children feel.
That's
What's actually happening? What's actually happening to our babies? Yeah, because they're our babies as well. What's actually happening to our children? Why, as I said before and earlier, why is it 1 minute they love you up, you know, your daddy's girl, you know, your boys are like, come on, we're going to kick a ball, and the next minute they don't want to talk to you. They're blocking.
I'll tell you what's going to happen.
What is happening with that?
Emotional dismissiveness. You think now that the women always complain about the husband's always emotionally dismissive. Yeah, I'm talking about maybe first or second generation of couples that I talk to. Yeah, maybe in their 40s, 50s. Yeah, I've never come across young couples. Well, I have, obviously, but more so older couples. It's always the man's always emotionally dismissive. This is how they saw the father react. You go and pray. There's no emotional connect. This is the Asian community itself, with all due respect. What will happen now to these children? They'll become worse than that. They'll hold everything in. They're not going to really trust. There's going to be a trust issue. Then they're not going to want to get married. So the system's agenda is working. Overload, double, treble, quadruple, whatever it may be.
Khalid, sorry, Ramiz, Khalid, I need to just get round the table. We're on limited time and everything like that. And I just want I want to hear your side of it and everyone else's side of it as well. Like, what is actually happening while the child, I keep going back on it because it's very important, because a lot of fathers are picking up the phone and one day is like, burp, or don't want to talk to you, and they're putting down the phone. What is going on? What is actually happening in this?
The child itself, just specifically talking about the children now. 1 minute the children are in a normal, like we say, normal family, mother and father all getting on. When the marriage breakdown starts happening, when certain things start initiating, you know, there's natural acrimony within that relationship. Children are there in the middle. They're always there in the middle. Once the father and mother are together, the children are there witnessing the arguments, the fighting, the abuse, even whatever. That psychologically impacts them. Then when the children are then removed from that loving or family home that they considered home, that then starts affecting them. When all of a sudden they are now being carted from one place to another, from one refuge to another house, to a hospital, or whatever. On top of that, then, the children are then being told that your father was abusive, he was this, he was that. Children are loyal to both parents. They then start having loyalty issues. Naturally, they'll be loyally inclined to the parent that they're with.
Who's the resident parent?
And they call them the primary carers. So that child will then have the loyalty with the primary carer. If that primary carer then is manipulating that child, saying, your father did this, your father did that to me, he's a bad person,
They'll believe it.
will believe it, exactly. And the younger the child, the easier they are to manipulate. The older the child, the worse the reaction is. So we have fathers that unfortunately, just very recently actually even, there's a father that just threw in the towel and gave up. He fought for 3 years, and the alienation got so bad within his 15-year-old son. It started off when he was a lot younger, that the son just doesn't want nothing to do with him. And all he was a loving father to that child. But now the child, for reasons that are not even
systematic, isn't it?
Yeah. Doesn't want anything to do with him. And he's at a point where, like Brother Ali said earlier, you know, fathers are on the verge of committing suicide. And, you know, I had to help and assist him not to do that. And I did attempt to get him to carry on fighting, but there comes a point where, you know, you're just fighting a losing battle. And, you know, you then have to start thinking about the souls as individuals, as men. But coming back to the children, it absolutely destroys them mentally and emotionally, where they will never get over it. I was in Parliament a few months back, and there was wide variety of people there. And there was someone called Professor Ben Hine there. He's doing studies on parental alienation. He was himself a victim of parental alienation when he was younger. And one thing that he said to me really struck out. He said, I'm 30-something years old now, and it still affects him to this day what my mum did and how she alienated me from father.
Well, in turn, that's going to affect his relationship. Absolutely. Unless he changes the cycle and break the cycle down. Because there's going to be a threshold or a saturation point where the father's saying, I'm done. And this is my point I was making. Psychologically, emotionally, there's going to be a lot of emotional dismissiveness. They're going to seek validation, negative escapism through drink, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, whatever it may be. I was called sex wrong, but you talk about drinking and drugs and whatever it may be. And then that's it. That's the systematic insidious anarchy, or the endpoints of that anarchy that system wants. Break up families now, and they'll never be healed.
We'll see the impact in 50, 20 years. Like
that's what I'm looking at now. In 5-10 years' time,
put the work in.
It's getting much worse.
Try and save as many as we can, and just to carry on talking about the alienation, what it does to a child. Now, as a grown-up man, we've all experienced some of it. Yeah, we've seen those depths of darkness where no one's come in. You know, I can talk about people I work with. They've prayed for death. Yeah, that's how bad it is to lose contact overnight with someone that you've known since birth. Yeah, your own child. If that's what happens to a human being who's navigated for 20, 30, 40 years of life and get to that stage, yeah, a child can't express what they're feeling. They don't understand it. I think you're just robbing that child of their childhood. That time cannot come back. And that emotional manifestation of that single parent, like I said, it's not just done for alienation, but as we discussed before, the emotional dependency with love. That child is treated with love and affection throughout those years. Mum will never leave you. Mum will always be here. Don't worry. Have an extra dessert. Whatever it is, these tactics are employed even well before, I think, obviously, the situation happens to keep that child on board. So as that child develops, even now with your two parents, you've grown up, for you to go against your parents, it is very difficult. If you just had one parent that you were there with, to as an adult then go against that one parent would be very difficult. Like I said to Ali was saying, I know someone in their 20s, the mere mention of his father, those defense barriers come up and it shuts down. It's that loyalty, it's a subconscious loyalty to the person that nurtured you and brought you up and kept you within that emotional security.
Because the alienating parent, they're controlling all the access, all the communication, what's going on.
The child is their possession. It is treated as their possession.
Exactly. And like what I've found and what I've experienced as well, if the child does not conform to the narrative,
the guilt trip,
of the alienating parent, they will suffer.
They're made to feel
the parent is alienating.
Can you touch on that, please, Arnie?
On this point on the effect on children, it's criminal.
It is criminal. It's an assault. It's an assault.
Yes, absolutely.
We need to really put on that. It's an assault.
As I said, the term itself, parental alienation, has been around for about 10 years. Prior to that, it was known as psychological abuse, emotional abuse. At the end of the day, it's child abuse in the form of coercive control. As I said previously, when the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021 was going through guidance, was in draft mode, parental alienation was in there under coercive control, because that's what it is. Yeah, and I feel it's even worse. I mean, coercive controlling an adult is one thing, which is obviously abuse and bad, but doing it to a child and to your own child, it's just completely sickening. It's criminal. I think parents that do this have got mental issues or mental conditions and need severe help in that respect. But we've seen in terms of the children, no matter what age it is they will be affected in some way in their life. You'll see they're affected in their education, they're affected in their friendships, they're affected within their social circles. The children themselves are affected. So regardless of whether the parent, mother or father, that has alienated that child and thought, yes, I've won, I've got them away from the other parent, I've cut them off, whatever their strategy or campaign was, what they fundamentally have done is really messed up this child, not just for the short term, but
long time.
and as you guys were saying, that there's obviously adults, researchers that are coming out, and it's 20, 30 years to see the effect that it's had on these children.
Well,
and we're already kind of seeing some of that.
I think now, as a one obvious solution point, is that we touched upon it, we jumped somewhere else, is that we keep talking about the conclusion and what's happening now. We need to think about how we can prevent it as well, by talking to couples who are already married and individuals who aren't already married, and without risking calling it a cliche. It's not only do we bring the Islamic element to it, but the reality of someone, how it will affect you and your children if you both don't come correct. Because there are we talk about it as if it's a mainstream, but it isn't the mainstream. But whoever's happening to, it is happening to them right now.
It's mainstream. I see it as mainstream. I see, like,
you mean it's the norm?
Father that contacts me, you see alienation.
No. I want to talk about that. I agree with. No, that I agree with. What I'm talking about. Yeah, every woman that's seeking divorce is going through that template system.
I mean, the subject is
yeah. So there is a lot of work to do here, not only as the cure or the solution, but in order for prevention and talking to couples that are already married before she's even brainwashed it. Because I believe they're brainwashed as well for feminism and watching TV and the social media and friends who are not really friends. Oh, how can you allow him to do that? He comes home, 16 hours later, he's always working, he's never there for you.
Okay, I'll give you one example. For example, away from parents, say there's a married couple, a child comes home from school, starts complaining about a certain teacher, for example, his math teacher, saying, well, the child's just complaining, he's just not liking the teacher and so on. The parents, they can also see there's something the teacher's taking out, a unprofessional, unliking to my child, or there's something not right there. And then one of the parents, both of the parents, start bad-mouthing that teacher in front of the child. What do you think is going to happen if that kid goes to school and is in front of his maths teacher?
Loss of respect immediately and do what you want.
So this is where we need to get a bit smarter around children as adults. Yeah, we can have our views. I've got many views on many different things.
Don't bring down your partner in front of the children.
Discuss them? Do I bring my children into those conversations? No. Going back to that teacher example, whether it's one parent, mother or father, or both parents, they should not be talking like that about
each other in front of them. Yeah,
in front of the child. Yeah. The term there is disparagement. Now, children, like I said, are sponges. Now, if I know my dad thinks X, Y, Z of a certain teacher, I'm
lose respect.
Yeah,
people will fall out. Your dad
X, Y, Z of a certain teacher. Now, if we're talking about teachers, now turn into
parents and fathers, no really.
The X, Y, Z, it's going to mess with the kid's head. Yeah, either it's going to be like the brother said, issues with loyalty, and then the child will pick a side. Because naturally that's what happens, and naturally it will be where the parent that they're spending majority of their time with.
Because that child doesn't be abandoned.
Attachment issues. Yeah.
From your fitra, from being a baby, we come into the world. The first people we engage is our parents, and we have that fear of being abandoned. So the child is going to attach on to one, even though they're still feeling that love in their heart, in their soul for that parent, and they can't process. I still got to stay on this side. Yeah, this is
the safer side.
On the safer side,
the more nurturing side.
They don't want to be abandoned.
This table and for the cameras is the fact that the people that are watching, if you are in a relationship or you are married and so on, just think about your actions in front of your children.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even if you are going through issues or what have you, just think about what is said and how you're acting and portraying each other. In front of the children. So that is very much key, and that is right from the beginning, because as soon as you cut that out, we've cut the whole alienation aspect out. So let's just hit it for the point. When you're talking no trash talking, no disparagement, no negative,
This is what we need to be speaking. Like I said, the solution to prevent prevention.
I'm going to do
Still looking to.
I want to hit the solutions at the end, because I still think there's meat on the bone
No. This is the solution. What the brother's saying.
for the actual what's happening to the children, my brother. Because the children are really suffering, and through the suffering, the parents suffering, if it's the mother or the father.
You're gonna end up with easily made criminals. That's what's gonna happen.
It's a point I've been trying to make, but I was trying to round it off here now, is my whole disappointment within the system. As Khalid probably might have seen in your experience, that when you're dealing with social services, when you're dealing with CAFCAS, they do assessments, and they completely overlook this. Their concentration is on abuse or domestic abuse. I don't discredit the domestic abuse, but let's not discredit the alienation. Let's not discredit what's going on with the child. And that's where I'm completely disappointed with the system, that the social workers, CAFCAS officers need to be more trained in this area. And they do have the toolkits, they do have resources, they do have means to do restorative work with the children. But whether they choose to do it or not is a different, I'm seeing a lack of that.
Yeah.
Of course, when I kept on mentioning earlier on the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021, and I mentioned parental alienation was a feature in there under coercive control, but it took a couple of years for it to go through draft guidance and then become finalised, like was parts of legislation. And lo and behold, parental alienation is no longer in there.
So why don't we use coercive?
It's coercive control.
Coercive control comes under abuse.
No, instead of using PA, why don't you start introducing coercive control instead of saying PA? They said no, it's coercive control. Anyone that brings it up and they say so, no, it's coercive control of the mother.
And addressing parental alienation, or when parents, for example, will come to me or we're speaking and they say this is alienation. One thing I'm having confidence to do is read between the lines. Is this alienation, or is this child displaying emotions from the breakdown?
Right, okay, yeah.
And read between the lines there. Once we've read between the lines, there is obviously the massive area of where you can, I was speaking to one brother recently the other night, and literally after he explained, what's happened in terms of he was having contact with his children, contact is stopped, mum puts in a non-molestation order, kids turn around and say dad's a bad man.
Yeah, that's basically a nutshell. So
You said something about forget PA's coercive control. PA has to be recognised because coercive control you can coerce.
No, I'm talking about using it as a legal term for them to accept it rather than them not accepting PA.
Why should we do that? Parental alienation is parental alienation. It's a parent that inflicts that harm. So having that term PA, it should be there. The thing is, what's happening now is the feminist movement or whatever it is, whatever you want to say, they know that the women are getting exposed in court because of the parental alienation. It's becoming obvious that children are being manipulated against the father. And that, I've been in court hearings time and time again, thankfully, where they have recognized parental alienation. Not as much as it should be, but where they have. So what they've done then is they try to switch it around and try to put that term parental alienation underneath the carpet and say that parental alienation in itself is a form of abuse used by the father.
Are we saying here that there's a problem for the kids to see their father? No, I mean, there's a problem if the kids see their father. Yeah. What is the woman's objective in the kids not seeing the father, or is she brainwashed by the system saying, no, I actually been alienated against my ex-husband, so I'm going to alienate my children because I've been brainwashed. She doesn't know she's been brainwashed.
That's a good question. So
I'm looking at I'm breaking it all down to the depth of what it can be, because
it all comes down to the whole process from start to end. What are the objectives and the goals for these women? When they leave, they want that independence, they want the financial independence, so they get promised the world. And I have this conversation time and time again because I see the end results. I work in the family court system. The grass is never greener, sisters, on the other side.
No.
Trust me.
That will go yellow as well, because you allowed the first grass to go yellow in the first place.
So they get promised, oh, you'll get social housing, we'll get you the benefits you need. When you get your independence, you can then work and do whatever. You'll get free childcare. You'll live your life.
But they can get anyway. Give the man the kids and go and live your life. You can have everything yourself.
They don't realise if it was that simple, it would be happening. They get coerced into going into this.
That's what I'm saying. Are they initially brainwashed as well?
People are getting
That's the
rich
thing.
on the back of sending them that, effectively, yeah.
How much regret is there from the woman's after she's got everything? Think, oh, what happened? What's happening now?
My involvement, when a court case finishes, you don't generally then know what's happening from the woman's perspective. I still stay involved from the father's perspective because generally we do get some form of contact. But then, I have seen women then realise and understand, you know what, I made a huge mistake. The grass is not greener. And then, they do start realising, and hopefully, more and more women will be doing that. This is why we need to talk about these uncomfortable things. It's not having a dig at the women. We are talking specifically just about the women right now, but we're not just attacking these sisters.
Just to put
Isn't
balance on
there
that,
women
though,
that you can use who regret it to put on the podium to start speaking to other sisters and brothers and women? We keep saying sisters, but women, but it's happening.
We're
Yes.
attacking anyone. We're attacking
What's being done? The action. Yeah, the action itself.
Let's just say we're attacking an action, and sometimes what we're seeing now as well, sisters or even brothers who are doing this, you're having 1, 2, 3 marriages throughout your life, and it always seems to be the same person who's the victim once they've gone through a next marriage. So this is no coincidence. It is a science, isn't it? It is a science
behind it, but I would just want to strip it down in terms of, I suppose, the layman's talk or and addressing what you said there. Khalid beautifully gave kind of a technical understanding in terms of what happens through the family courts and so on. But I think kind of where, in terms of general society, both men and women hold this sort of concept of a bad husband equals a bad father, a bad wife equals a bad mother. That is not the case. It's not a bad husband.
Mean a bad father, yeah.
A bad mother. No, a bad wife does not equal.
We've heard the saying, you're a bad husband, but you're a good father.
Necessarily. Sometimes there is some correlation in terms of it was a bad husband, which reflected in his parenting. Yeah, that doesn't exist, but I'm just saying.
But generally, it doesn't exist.
So there's that distinction in terms of, and you must have seen it, Khalid, in terms of court cases where they get to a certain point and you realise that there's been all this noise made about this abuse that happened 3-4 years ago.
And then it's all put to the side.
How is this connected to child contact?
Yeah. Right.
And it's not really connected to child contact. Go away and crack on.
If you look at most of it, how is it connected to child contact?
It's not.
If a husband and wife have broken down, all right, we got to get divorced. I've spoken to women, mothers, most of them. Yeah, I want him to come round, pick up the kids, and take them for the weekend. Normal.
Give me a break.
Normal behaviour. And they also say normal. People in this situation. The child needs me, and he needs his father as well. Or he needs his father and he needs his mother. That's a healthy way to bring up a child. But we do see what we're talking about is parent alienation. It's just off the scale in the way that if you've got beef with the woman and the woman's got beef with you, what's that got to do
with the child?
With the child.
It's the individual.
Ego winning comes down to ego.
The individual. I'll tell you. No, sorry about that. It's the individual's, like you're saying, it's the individual's psychological upbringing in being a narcissistic pig, whether it's male or female. And I tell you that straight. When you've got children involved and you've got a father whose sole being is to provide and protect for his family, and then you've got a woman who's been brainwashed, or not even brainwashed, it's herself that wants to do it, this is satanic. And any woman or man, and we're going to say, I'm saying that to be balanced, but what I'm hearing now is always the women to doing it. Those who are not being brainwashed, and I think it's very, very minimal, I'm just trying to be polite here, they are not being brainwashed into the system, and they are doing it because they're narcissistic pigs. You're a shaitan. It's as simple as that. what I'm hearing, in conclusion, what I'm hearing is that forget the minority cases whereby, I've been brainwashed and I regret it. I wish I never divorced. Okay, we'll leave that to the side. But the majority of these women that are doing it, and I'm saying majority of women that are doing it, from what I'm hearing from the statistics, is that they know what they're doing. And it's just full on narcissistic attention seeking control, and that's all it is. Is that a borderline personality or disorder?
They know exactly what they know exactly.
Yeah, it's a BPD in regards to that.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Ramiz just said there, I sit in court day in, day out, and I see Oscar-winning performances by these women.
I don't know how you do it. I'm in prison.
I know.
Very difficult.
They know exactly what they're doing. Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing, because when they're moving on now to the next guy, or they're moving on to the next woman, they've got to play the victim. So when they walk into the next relationship, he did this and he did that, and I'm like, I was left stranded with the kids. But they very soon they get exposed, they get realised out what's going on. But
Just
what are you going to say?
sorry, just want to add to just balance to that. There are genuine female victims out there of domestic abuse
That's what it said. It's
and violence.
Right,
And these people, no, but that's what I'm saying. That all of these people that we're talking about, all of the false allegations, coercion, all of that, they are taking genuine aid from those women that genuinely need it. So, just to put balance to it, we are here supporting anyone that's taking abuse, especially women, and they should be.
We're here for
looked
justice for
after.
anybody.
But with what is going on, purely in order for financial reasons, this aid is being taken away from those genuine victims that need it, and the women that are engaging in this are damaging it and ruining it for the genuine victims out there of abuse. That's the thing.
And there are many genuine
100%,
cases
yes,
where the man is abusive and that deserves doesn't deserve. I don't wish any man not to see his children, but to break off a marriage, it's your fault from what you're doing. But not to see his kids, I don't agree with that.
Again, that comes down to what Ali was saying. You're not necessarily a bad father if you're a bad father.
Yeah, exactly. A mistake doesn't a bad man make. It's just that he's not good at relationships. Fine, but he's a very good provider and a protector of his children.
go back to the beginning, the community element from like everyone wants to lay blame. He was the bad guy. My son was great. My daughter was an angel before we got.
Because everyone is privileged and self-righteous. That's what it is.
It's that
Instead of being humble and seeing for what it is.
individualism.
My daughter is not being good in the situation. It's it's the father's situation. It's the father's responsibility as a wali. So he's probably on her case because he's afraid to be alienated by his own wife to say, no, how can you go against our daughter? Well, she's wrong.
Let's look at the whole family before it, not just the husband and the wife. Because, for example, if the wife has taken the kids and she's not letting the father sit behind her, she's got support.
She's got brothers and fathers, yeah.
The father, sisters, they then are perpetuating the abuse as well. If you go to any khutbah up and down the country, Jummah Salah, you go to a khutbah, what are they talking about? That's the best time to go speak to the youth, speak to everyone, the congregations, all there. They should be talking about these issues.
This is a current affair. This is the current affair that's happening in the Muslim Ummah.
I've only heard a handful of sheikhs, imams speaking about it. Sheikh Haytham, I think he's been speaking about it. Other than that, you go and try to speak about these issues.
They don't want to know.
They don't want to know.
In fact, I've heard I heard last week that a brother went there to talk about this, and so we can't consistently get offended.
Yeah. I did that part. Look, Sheikh Haytham, he was the only prominent scholar that is talking about these things, and he's not afraid to. He's head of Islamic Council of Europe, and we've got to support people like him. He made a video very recently, a few months back, and he got a lot of backlash.
I'm going to contact him and support it actually, because this is not on. I mean, I've spoken to him about things before, but not on this subject.
So how do we round up people? How do we round up other organisations? I mean, I'm looking into the camera now. This isn't just an issue for us. This is an issue for everybody. This is an
issue for those who are looking at watching this podcast.
Yeah,
everybody.
It's an issue for like community, social healthness, isn't it? I mean, like, it's got out of order now. Most of the statistics show that crime, people committing suicide, people ending up in prison, is because they come from one parent family.
One parent families.
Yeah, A father and a mother need to bring up a child, not just a mother, not just a father. By the statistics, single parent fathers bring up children better than single parent mothers, if you want to go and look at the figures as well. But I just need to say to, as we're trying to wrap up here, you know, if you see a child just taking their father or taking their mother out of the equation of parent, don't want to speak to them, you've got to know that's a red flag. All the psychologists have been saying this, but it's a red flag, isn't it? You know, 1 minute you're a loving father, loving daughter, son, the next minute it's all gone, no contact or anything like that. So something has happened.
And I'll just add to that, look, how do we prevent it? You know, you said prevention is better than cure sometimes.
Well, most times, isn't it?
Most of the time, it's within the family unit itself. If your daughter, if your, sister, your auntie is doing this, stopping that father seeing the child, you know.
But there's not enough men, brother. This, you said man up earlier. I was about to cry. There's not enough men. Men are not men anymore.
Because that is so pointed. He is so right as well. What he said, that what you just read. There are so many men in families who watching this going on.
Males, not men.
Male, watching it going on. Carry on, please. Just repeat what you just said.
That's what I said. It's from the family unit. You've got to step up and stop this abuse. He may have treated your daughter or your niece badly. Or was he a good father?
If you are coming into that realization, put a stop to it immediately. Yeah. And honestly, look to get some therapy in the correct sense for your children. If they are not seeing their parent and it is due to their alienation, fix that. Fix that, whether it's through the court system, whether it's through private mediation. Children should not be cut off from their parents based on alienation. And just because you're a victim of domestic abuse, does not mean your child has to suffer all their life, all their childhood from being cut off from the other parent.
Just as a final thing, I just want to address the sisters. Sisters, look, our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, please wake up to what's happening. I just want to end with this one quote that a sister very powerfully made. This whole subject has been about parental alienation. This sister, she's reformed. She was there. She was one of these bitter women that was alienating the children, that were using the children as weapons.
I love this.
The quote that she said was, "I was eating the poison in the hope that it killed him," and that's
wow. That's profound.
Wow. Say that again, bro.
I was eating the poison in the hope that it would kill him. So you can judge by what.
Well, it's like cutting your nose to spite of your face. What you're doing to him and the children, you do it to yourself. You don't realise it. Just don't realise it.
Okay, so we've run out of time on this subject. We could probably talk for days and weeks and months on, and still have more to talk about. I would just like to end this podcast on a positive note, and I see a lot of brothers. I can talk about the guys I meet, not the women I've seen. I don't really know what's going on there, but with the brothers, I see a lot of guys really in depression and really lost all hope. Remember, all hope comes from Allah, yeah? Just pray to Allah for this time in your life to change, which it will, inshallah. And seek happiness, brothers, sisters, everyone out there, just seek happiness. And know that happiness is there for you as well. But if you're standing still in one place or your head is down, you're never going to see it. Yeah, so strive. The saying I sometimes throw out there is like, play to the whistle, Just keep playing. If you get thrown down on the floor or someone commits a foul, you still go for the goal, yeah. Till the whistle is blown, that's when you stop the game. And the only one who can blow that whistle and stop that whistle is Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So on that note, thank you very much for tuning into our podcast, Cage Closed. We'll see you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.